What if your government could arrest you for telling a joke and send you to Siberia to die in the snow? In the vast frozen landscapes of the Soviet Union, millions of people vanished into a nightmarish system of forced labor, torture, and slow death. They were called Gulags, Stalin's secret weapon to crush dissent, fuel industry, and terrorize a population into silence. But what exactly were these Gulags? And how did they become one of the darkest symbols of state oppression in modern history? Let's dive deep into one of the most brutal chapters of the 20th century. What were the Gulags? The word Gulag is actually an acronym. Glavnoye Upravlenie Lagerai, meaning main camp administration. It referred to a vast network of forced labor camps scattered across the Soviet Union, from the icy wastes of Siberia to the deserts of Central Asia. While many associate Gulags with Joseph Stalin, their roots trace back to Vladimir Lenin, the founder of the Soviet state. But under Stalin, from the late 1920s to the early 1950s, the Gulag system exploded in size and brutality. These were not just prisons. They were death machines, where millions were worked to the bone, building railroads, mining gold, logging forests, often with no tools but their bare hands. Who was sent to the Gulags?
Anyone. That's the terrifying truth.
Our political opponents, intellectuals, artists, religious figures, peasants, soldiers, foreigners. Entire ethnic groups, even people who told political jokes or were simply accused by neighbors, could be branded enemies of the people. The most infamous tool of repression was Article 58, a vague Soviet law that punished anti-Soviet behavior. Under this, a simple complaint about food shortages could mean 10 years hard labor. The system thrived on fear and paranoia. Children were taught to report their parents. Workers accused colleagues to protect themselves. Innocence meant nothing. Loyalty to the party was everything. The scale of the Gulag system. By the 1930s, the Soviet Union was imprisoning people on a massive scale. Under Stalin's rule, over 18 million people passed through the Gulags. At least 1.5 to 2 million died from starvation, exhaustion, disease, cold, or execution. At its height in 1953, the Gulag population was over 2.5 million. Some camps were bigger than cities. For example, Kolyma in the Russian Far East was one of the harshest camps. Prisoners there mined gold in sub-zero temperatures. Vorkuta, beyond the Arctic Circle, became a frozen hell of coal mines and hunger. The camps didn't just punish, they powered the Soviet economy, providing cheap labor for Stalin's industrial ambitions. Life inside a gulag. Imagine waking up in a wooden barrack filled with lice, in temperatures as low as 40 degrees Celsius. You eat a bowl of watery soup with maybe a piece of bread. You're sent into the forest to chop down trees all day. No gloves, no proper boots. If you fail your work quota, your food is cut even more. And if you collapse, you're beaten or left to die.
That was life for millions.
Food was meager and based on output. If you didn't produce, you starved. Work was grueling: mining, road building, logging, or constructing secret cities. Punishments were severe: solitary confinement, beatings, exposure to the cold. Healthcare was non-existent. Guards were often cruel and corrupt. Some encouraged violence among prisoners. Survival often meant betrayal, bribery, or losing your humanity. Women were not spared. They were also imprisoned, forced to labor, and often sexually exploited by guards or prisoners. Psychological terror. The Gulag wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Prisoners were stripped of identity, told they were enemies of the people, isolated from their families, given false confessions to sign, pressured to inform on others.
One of the cruelest things?
Most prisoners had no idea how long they would be there. Trials were fake, evidence manufactured, sentences were arbitrary. Entire families were shattered.
Fathers disappeared.
Children were sent to orphanages or labor colonies. The Great Purges and peak repression. Between 1936 and 1938, Stalin launched the Great Terror or Great Purge. a campaign to eliminate anyone he saw as a threat. Over 1 million people were executed. Another millions were sent to gulags. High-ranking officials, Red Army generals, artists, writers, no one was safe. Stalin's paranoia became state policy. Interrogators used torture, sleep deprivation, beatings, threats to family. They forced people to confess to crimes they didn't commit just to stop the pain. The gulags in culture and testimonies.
Few survived, and even fewer spoke.
But some did. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Nobel Prize-winning author and Gulag survivor, exposed the truth in his powerful book, The Gulag Archipelago. His work, banned in the USSR, revealed the horrors of the camps, changing how the world viewed Soviet communism. He wrote, "If only it were all so simple. If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being." Others like Varlam Shalamov documented life in Kolyma, exposing how humanity breaks under extreme suffering. The Soviet regime tried to suppress these voices, but truth found a way. The decline of the Gulag. After Stalin's death in 1953, the Gulag system began to unravel. New leader, Nikita Khrushchev, denounced Stalin's brutality in his famous secret speech of 1956. Thousands of political prisoners were freed. Many camps were shut down, but others remained quietly functional, repurposed or renamed. By the late 1980s, under Gorbachev's glasnost, the full scale of the repression finally came into the open.
Monuments were built.
Apologies were issued. Mass graves were discovered. But justice, that was rare.
Legacy of the gulags.
The legacy of the Gulag still haunts Russia and former Soviet states. Many people still don't know where their family members died. Some towns in Siberia still exist today, built entirely by slave labor. The archives remain incomplete, and many names have been lost forever. And even today, echoes of the Gulag system can be seen. Political imprisonment in modern Russia, suppression of dissent, state propaganda vilifying enemies, lack of accountability for past crimes. Some modern leaders try to downplay or erase the past, calling Stalin a great leader. But survivors and historians continue to fight for truth and remembrance. The human cost. The Gulag system is more than a historical fact. It's a human tragedy. Millions of lives destroyed, generations traumatized, trust in society shattered. And yet, out of the suffering came stories of resilience, kindness among prisoners, underground culture, survivors who refused to stay silent, cinematic outro. Imagine standing in the snowy silence of a forgotten Siberian forest. Beneath your feet lie the bones of men and women who dared to speak out, or simply existed in the wrong place at the wrong time. Their stories were nearly lost, but they are not forgotten. The gulags were not just prisons. They were a mirror of unchecked power, a warning of what happens when truth is silenced and fear rules.
May we remember, may we speak.
And may such cold never fall on humanity again.